Hello, I'm Alexander the OK, and welcome to episode 31 of my look at the Japanese tech tree in War Thunder. Today I'm looking at the Kai 83. This is a prototype long-range heavy fighter built by the Japanese. There are approximately 4 prototypes of this plane made, but it never actually saw combat. It's armed with 2 Ho 5 20mm cannons and 2 Ho 155 30mm cannons, which I'm going to try out on some nice American bombers. And we'll see just how effective they are. So I nearly hit the wing of that B-17. As you can see, they're pretty effective. It's a bomber hunter, really. There's not much more to be said about it in terms of what it is. It plays much in the same way as many of the Japanese heavy fighters. That it's surprisingly manoeuvrable, but you don't really want to be engaging too many single-engine fighters with this. It's powered by 2 Mitsubishi HA-43 Ru engines, which produce 2,070 horsepower each. That's at sea level. And it's a very fast plane. The US post-war testing of this plane found it could do 762 kilometers an hour, which is 473 miles per hour. I was going to go after that B-24, but my allies seem to have got that, even though, well, sticking on the tail of a B-24 isn't the best way to go about doing that. As you can see, he does actually manage to take down the friendly Ki-83, which is one of the problems with this plane is rather susceptible to damage. As you can see, my left engine actually took a 50 cal hit, and well, fortunately it's not leaking anything, but it has reduced the engine power to it somewhat. So, flying back, I see this F-82 is flying towards me and is actually pulling up into the vertical, so I decide to bait him up for my allies. And to roll over so he can't get guns on target, and then try and drop back in on a 6. There is actually a second crewman in this aircraft, although he's not actually modelled, but if you see the glass in the rear of the fuselage there, just behind the wings, there is actually another, I believe a navigator, because this was meant to be a very long-range heavy fighter. So here I notice my friendly landing craft is shooting at, well, it's an 84, there we go, who is strafing them out. So I'm going to drop in, although no, there are some landing craft still down there, I think, although, oh no, they haven't been taken out. But it wouldn't do to let the 84 rearm and take out the ones attacking the other island. So I've throttled back. As you can see, the 20mm cannons sort of hit and miss, but those 30mm cannons rip that 84 to shreds. So here I'm pulling away to get some altitude. It's very important to have altitude over your opponents in this plane, given that you're not as manoeuvrable as most single-engine fighters. You are very fast, but yeah, it doesn't generally do to have single-engine fighters diving in this plane. As you can see, I've throttled back a bit. It does have the same problem as the Ki 108 did, in that its engines overheat, although it's nowhere near as bad as in the Ki 108. And unfortunately, I do actually have a single-engine fighter diving me in that P-47. Fortunately, there are a few allies around me, and so I dive underneath the P-47 in order to make him increase his speed and duke under his guns, and I roll over because he's going to overshoot, but he actually just plows into the sea, so count that as a manoeuvre kill. Moving on to the second match, where I'm going to try and intercept this B-17 before he gets to our bombing point. And this shows you the speed of the aircraft. It's easily getting up over 600 kilometers an hour without redlining. And I turn most of that speed back into altitude after having set the B-17 on fire. You see the engines do get very hot if you continue to wep, and I was forced to pull back. As you can see, just pulling back to 90% is more than enough to start cooling your engines off. Excuse me, I had to cough there. As you see, the fire did actually wind up taking out the B-17, but unfortunately attacking that B-17 has left me more vulnerable to single-engine fighters, so I turned back towards my team to attempt to get some distance from that P-51 there, and also start gaining a bit more altitude. Fortunately that P-51 is diving to avoid fighting that friendly DO 355? The Dornier. That weird push-pull twin-engine German heavy fighter. So, I turn back in order to help the Dornier attack the P-51. P-51 is manoeuvring to dodge underneath the Dornier, and I'm keeping an eye on some of the contacts I've spotted over to my east there. Forced that P-51 to dive underneath me, only got a small hit there, nothing serious in his airframe, and I pull away from him. I probably shouldn't have gone into a vertical loop here, because, well, this plane doesn't manoeuvre all that well in the vertical. As you can see, I do actually wind up having to roll my plane over in order to get the nose back down. Now, both of them seem to have taken each other out there, or at least the P-51 has certainly taken out my Dornier, but he doesn't seem to be recovering from that dive. Yep, and he's also been taken out, which is somewhat unfortunate. I would have liked to help the Dornier, and I now have a Spitfire on my tail, so I turn and dive away. The Spitfire won't be able to keep up with me in a dive, and I call for backup for my team. Also, I noticed the Spitfire has carried on rather than diving on me. I level out and then start to regain some altitude, especially as the Spitfire is now being engaged by two friendlies. Bit of a bug in the recording there. Sorry for that. So as you can see, rather than trying to loop over vertically, I just nose down and then do a regular turn to get around this time, and try and fly back to help that TAR against the Spitfire. Yes, this plane does require a fair amount of engine management in order to not have them overheat, which is sort of a pain, but it's not too bad. You can actually have overheated engine for quite a while before they start taking damage, but I just rather not risk it. As you see, the TAR and the Spitfire are engaged in a dogfight, and I know the Spitfire is going to go underneath me here, so I roll over so I can use my elevator and actually get that nice inverted kill there. That Spitfire down there is the last opponent, but I don't get the kill, so I'm just going to cut away here to the last bit of footage, which I'm actually uptid here, as you can see by that F-80. I'm diving down on this LA-9, which is actually quite a dangerous opponent at low level for this aircraft. But I don't think he noticed me. As you can see, very fast plane with a very high rip speed. I was getting over 800 kilometers an hour there without redlining. But once the LA dives into the clouds, I decided not to engage. I'm a bit worried about this F4U, who's being chased down by an R2Y, which is, yeah, it doesn't engage me. And so I roll over and look at that F3D. Is that the Sky Knight? It's a jet anyway. I considered going after the F4U, but I decided not to because of the F3D. who for some reason turns underneath me here and I'm able to get a nice shot into his wing there, saving my J7W from being shot down. And I retarget this LA9, following him through the clouds, spot him there, only manage to get a hit in, don't follow into that turn and instead extend away. I'm now being chased down by a jet, but fortunately I actually have the energy advantage over that jet, and these early jets don't have the best acceleration, so I'm able to actually turn up and over, although my engine is now damaged. Fortunately he also blew all his energy trying to catch me up here, and I'm actually able to so that was me dropping my headphone wires. Drop down onto the 6 of this F80, and you see the poor acceleration of these early jets. I'm easily able to catch him up here and take off his wing. I'm actually going to keep engaging him here because, well, it's War Thunder. It takes more than a lost wingtip to take a plane down. And so I drop back on the 6. I'm only using the 20mm here in order to save the 30mm ammo, which is significantly more effective. Once I know he's not going to pull out of that dive, I level off again and start heading back towards my base. Because, well, this plane can't really fly on one engine. I cut away as I'm coming back towards my base, actually spot the last enemy player, who's at B-17 there. So I think, why not engage him? Trying to locate a spot in this crowd is fairly difficult. Fortunately for me, I believe he fires off a few shots there, so I know where he is. And as I come in here, I probably shouldn't have engaged because I'm far too close, and as I sort of panic, I rammed the B-17. But the Ki-83, it's a very good heavy fighter, helping Alexander the OK. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.